subtraction. Inverse of subtraction is addition. Okay? So to basically what they used to, when I was in elementary school, they would say, subtraction will undo addition. Addition will undo subtraction. Okay? So here, what we've got is the whole process of solving. Solve means to get the variable on one side of the equation by itself. Okay, it doesn't matter if the variable is on the left side or the right side. The whole process of solving an equation is to get that variable basically isolated by itself. Okay, when you isolate something, you put it off to the side. Like if I was to isolate Nick from the class, we'd stick him outside in the hallway, shut the door, lock it, chain him to the wall, all that stuff. All right, so we'd isolate him, or we might put him in a dark closet. Okay, shut the door, lock it, don't let him out. Okay, isolate. So we want to isolate the variable when we're solving the equation. So we want it totally by itself. Okay, to do that, in this case, we have to get the 5 and move it to the other side of the equal sign to isolate the C. Okay, so to do that, we do the inverse operation. So what we have then is this: C plus 5 minus 5 equals 8 minus 5. Okay? So, yeah, you should remember it. We spent quite a bit of time on it last year. All right? And now on this side of the equation, the left side of the equation, the C plus 5 and minus 5 cancel each other out, thus leaving C by itself on the left side of the equation. Okay? The 8 minus 5, well, remember we've got to go 8 plus negative 5. Okay? We still have to change subtraction to addition. Okay? And when you get 8 plus negative 5, what do you get? 3. Why would we have to? Because you're going to have a problem in a few minutes that looks like that. And so if I have something that looks like that, you're going to have that right there. And there are no mathematical rules for 8 minus 12. However, there are mathematical rules. This cancels, leaving me a C is equal to 8 plus negative 12. Then therefore, C would be equal to negative 4. Okay? So that is why we want to change subtraction to addition. You will also have some times when the number on the right side of the equation is a negative and you're subtracting a positive from it. So therefore, you would have to change subtraction to addition, do the opposite. Okay? All right, let's look at another one. Let's say we have this: 6 plus S minus 4 equal 8. Now, there are two ways that you can do this problem. They're both correct. You will get the same answer on both of them, providing you do the right mathematics. Okay? We have two constants. And we have just got out of section 2 where we said that we can put constants together. Okay? But to do that, I must do this first. I must do that right there. Okay, change the subtraction to addition and do the opposite of 4, which is negative 4. Okay, now I can rearrange these terms and say S plus 6 plus negative 4 equals 8. Well, what is 6 plus negative 4? 2. So that's S plus 2 equal 8. Okay, now that I've simplified, so this right here was simplifying before solving. Okay, I just simplified the two constants, and now I have a regular, what looks like a regular equation, and so therefore I just take s plus 2 minus 2 equals 8 minus 2. Once again, the plus 2 and the minus 2 cancel, and that leaves me at the s is equal to 6. Okay, please remember that 8 minus 2 is the same thing as 8 plus negative 2. Okay? Those are the same. That's why it's equal to 6. I'm just doing it in my head instead of doing it on the screen. Okay? Now then, they go in and they make it a little bit harder, and they go with negative 16 equal 5.5 plus x plus 3.5. Okay? Negative 16 is equal to 5.5 plus x plus 3.5. Now, once again, I can simplify the two constants. So I'm going to take negative 16 is equal to 5.5 plus 3.5 plus x. Now here I didn't have to change anything before I used the commutative property because there was no subtraction in the problem. When there's subtraction in the problem, you don't have a commutative property for subtraction. You only have a commutative property for addition and multiplication. So therefore, for me to be able to rearrange terms, put them in a different order, it must be all addition, okay, or multiplication. Right now we're dealing with addition today. Okay, so to go from here to here, that was just the commutative property. Okay, and remember the commutative property basically says A plus B plus C would be equal to C plus B plus A, rearranging the terms. Okay, now I can go ahead then and put 5.5 and 3.5 together. And what does that equal? 9. So now I have negative 16 is equal to 9 plus x. Okay? Well, to solve that, I have to do the inverse of adding, which is subtracting. So that means I have negative 16 minus 9 equals 9 plus 9 minus 9 plus x. So here is the part that I added to the equation to solve it. Okay? This is the inverse operation used to solve. Okay? Now, in our problem up here, the 9 and the subtracting 9, well, what is 9 minus 9? 0. Not nothing, but 0. Okay? So, that gives us this. Negative 16 plus negative 9 equals x. Okay, once again, I changed this to the plus, and I did the opposite of the 9. And what is negative 16 plus negative 9? Negative 25. Okay, because this, negative 16 plus negative 9 would be the negative 25. Okay, so obviously you have to know the process. That's why you say, well, can I do that? I can do that in my head. Okay, well, good for you. You eventually will not be able to do it in your head. Okay? Any questions on that one before I move on to the next one? All right. I want you to try this one on your own. 13 plus W equal negative 7. Give you about a minute to do that one, and then we'll discuss it. All right. W plus 13 equal negative 7. Once again, be W plus 13 minus 13 equal negative 7 minus 13. Now, as you will notice, when I'm doing the inverse operation, I'm usually putting it after the constant on the one side that has just the constant. Okay, it's not wrong necessarily but on this case, it'd be very hard for you to say, with what you know right now, to say minus 13, negative 7. Okay, so just continue to put it after the constant on each one. When you have the constant on one side by itself, do your inverse operation after that. Okay, now, on our left side of the equation, the plus 13 and the minus 13 cancel each other out, leaving W equal negative 7. Change the subtraction to addition, and do the opposite of 13, which is negative 13. Now, I have two negative numbers. When you have two negative numbers, we simply add the two numbers together. 7 plus 13 is 20, and keep the negative sign. So for those of us that can count with 7, we get negative 20. Those of us that make some careless mistakes occasionally, you might get something else. All right. So, let's look at this one. Negative 5.1 is equal to x minus 14.2. All right, there is no simplification to do beforehand. Okay, so we just do it. Huh? There's subtraction. X minus 14.2.
Oh, no, you don't.
Well, there's two different ways you can do it, and both of them are correct. First way is to just do the inverse operation, which is this. Okay? That's the inverse operation. Now, yes, we end up having to, over here, this just cancels. Let me use a different color besides that. That just cancels, because you're minusing 4.2 and then you're adding 4.2 or 14.2. Okay? When you come up to here, now I have negative 5.1 plus 14.2 equal x. Now I have a negative and a positive, and so I have to take their absolute values and subtract the absolute values. So that would be 14.2 minus 5.1 equal x. Now, I put them vertically because realistically you're supposed to line up the decimals when you're adding or subtracting. Now, some of you can probably subtract that in your head, and that's okay if you want to leave them horizontally, if you can do it in your head. Okay? When you subtract those, you get 9.1 equal x. Now, we've got to make sure there's our absolute value. The positive 14.2 has a larger absolute value, so therefore it is a positive 9.1 is your answer. Now, you can take this original problem and do this. Okay, you can go ahead and change the subtraction at the first. Okay, you can do that and say negative 5.1 equal x plus negative 14.2. Okay, the problem you run into is the way I'm showing you to do it. See, I usually teach two different ways here. When you get into algebra, I teach a simpler way, but it's not simpler at this level, because then you have to remember, okay, I got to change this. Why am I doing this? And the easier way to do this is once you change all subtraction to addition, we simply move this negative 14.2 over here. Here it was a negative. Here it becomes a positive because you're changing the side of the equal sign. Then it's a positive 14.2, and you have the same thing here now that you had here. Okay, but I would just, right now, just stay with the inverse. Just do the inverse. Then once you've done the inverse, if you need to change it, change it. Okay, don't do this now because it's a lot. There's several times that, if you really get it, then boom, you can get it and get it done. Now, eventually, when you get into 9th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, you'll be able to see this and go, okay, boom, you'll be able to do that step. It'll be easy for you. But right now, as you're just learning it, it's better to learn the process of what you're actually doing, which is the inverse operation. So stay with this method here for the time being. Did you get that, Nick? All right. All right. Let me give you one to try on your own here. T minus 6.8 equals 13.9. T minus 6.8 equal 13.9. Okay. All right. Let's look at this one. So we have T minus 6.8. The inverse would be to add 6.8 equals 13.9 plus 6.8. So once again, the inverse operation was the plus 6.8. Okay, now on the left side of the equation, subtracting 6.8 and adding 6.8 cancel each other out. That makes 0. Okay, and so that leaves me with T on the left side. Then I just simply take 13.9 plus 6.8 and add those two things together. You get 20.7. Okay, so really not a necessarily hard problem. Let me see, there's one in here, I think, maybe not. Let's look at one. I don't think there's one, but for some reason I remember one in this. Let's say you had this. Negative b equal 5. Okay. Well, when you're solving equations, okay, when you're solving equations, you're solving for the positive value of the variable, not the negative. Okay, so we don't want negative b, we want b. Okay, now, basically what this says right here is, that says the opposite of B is equal to 5. So if the opposite of B is equal to 5, then what would B have to be equal to? Negative 5. Okay? So this basically is, that right there is equivalent to B equal negative 5. Okay? So when you see this equation, negative B equal 5, then B has to be equal to negative 5. If it would have said this, negative B is equal to negative 5, then B would be equal to 5. Okay? It shows up, I thought it showed up in this section, but it may be the next section, but I know at some point you're going to see that, so we can cover that and know that. Okay? Now, things don't change with fractions. Okay? It's not nice to hate things, even fractions. It's not nice to, so you're saying that since God created fractions, you hate God's creation, because God's created fractions. You either believe that everything is created by God or it's not created by God. You can't think that one thing is created by God. Now, there is things that were created by God that man has manipulated into being bad things. Okay? For example, a good example, you think of the cocoa beans. Cocoa beans are good things when done properly with them. But unfortunately, people have taken the cocoa beans and changed it into cocaine. Okay, that's man's sinful nature taking something that God has created and changing it into, okay, the cocoa beans and the things that go on with cocoa beans, some kind of derivative of that turns it into cocaine, and that's a bad thing, obviously. So, there are things that, but fractions are not one of those things. Okay? Fractions are not one of those things that man's sinful nature has taken and made into something sinful. All right? So it's not nice to hate fractions. Now, back to where I need to go with this. Yeah, we're not going to have time to cover that, so we'll do the first part and not do that. All right, so your homework. 7.3, and we're going to do 1 through 22. Okay, 1 through 22. It's due on Monday. You may go. See ya.